Hello everyone, welcome to yesterday's Airlines. I am back, somewhat reluctantly I admit, to discuss the recently announced jcwings end of February even. God, the year is moving on quickly. The end of February announcements. The reason I'm a little reluctant is that if you get a sense of deja vu watching this video, you probably won't be alone, because these releases are, on the whole, fairly repetitive, and jcwings really is a brand treading water a lot of the time. But this month, we do nonetheless have 13 models to discuss. As per usual with JC, not all of these models are going to be out in your lifetime. 5 of them are going to be out about the same time that aviation manages to become carbon neutral. So, possibly never. But 8 of them will be out quite soon, and at least reasonably pleasingly, JC have managed to provide photos, quite good photos actually. The photos are definitely improving. Quite good photos of the models, which is a good and a bad thing, really, I guess. It's good because it gives you a really clear view of the models, and it's not always good because it gives you a really clear view of the models. Anyway, as always, we will be checking out and ranking these jcwings releases in just a moment, but please subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the content. Chuck a like on the video, and yeah, drop a line on the comments there and tell me what it is you're looking at getting out of this bunch and how you feel about jcwings and what they're up to at the moment. Check me out on Instagram at Airlines and Facebook obviously too, and always keep an eye out on the website. But let's get in to this bunch of jcwings releases without further ado. Okay, so we'll start usual fashion for these JC videos now. Airbuses into the Boeings, but we'll keep the long-term future models for the end of the video and focus on the models that are going to be released soonish in the beginning of the video. And that means that we're starting out with another Thomas Cook Airbus A321. This one's registered, can't speak today. This one's registered GTCDE, and it is wearing the Pride style heart after the main titles, which is the primary difference between this model and GTCDH, which was released in 2021. As I'm sure you well know, there's almost 100% chance that this model was made at exactly the same time as the previous model, even though that was a couple of years ago that it was released, and it's just been hanging around the JC warehouse. In fact, you could probably say that about the majority of the models that are being released this month. I seriously doubt any of them were made in the past 6 months. They were all made earlier and have only just trickled towards the finish line of being released. So, Thomas Cook in 400 scale for A321s is an airline that's not very well covered. This is the 3rd Thomas Cook release on this mold. Gemini have made one, and now this is the 2nd jcwings version. Phoenix have also made one, which means you've got a selection of 4 bad A321s to choose from, because none of these manufacturers have A321 molds that really stand up to a great deal of scrutiny. The JC version's better than the Phoenix, but marginally so. This model is going to be skirting the line, I would say, between workhorse and gas guzzler. If I was feeling harsh, I could probably slip this down into gas guzzler and not be overly upset with myself. But the JC A321, it's not a disaster, and there aren't that many Thomas Cook releases about. I'm sure that there are people out there who would be quite keen to pick this up. So even though it's a re-release and the mold isn't great, I think I'll keep it at workhorse. I'm not going to be too mean on this model. Next up is something which should be more interesting because it's never been made before in 400 scale, and it's quite a cool aircraft type. And this is an A340-500. It's registered 9K GBA. It's QA government, which is wearing kind of a scheme which looks very much like the old Q8 Airways scheme, but different. It's the fourth governmental jcwings A340-500 that has been made. They previously made Thai government, Turkish government, and the Italian Air Force One, which actually hasn't been released yet. So it's an interesting line of releases. There's not a great deal to do with the A340-500. Obviously, Gemini have made some of this mould. Clearly, the front-running mould for this type is Phoenix. Their A340-500 is excellent and quite easily beats the JC version, which is seamed and not quite as well shaped across the board. But this mould is perfectly okay. It's been updated with aerials. It's not bad. My big issue with this release, however, is clearly when you look at the pictures that JC have put out, the cheat line is all over the shop. From the side, you can see that at the nose it's too low, and then it kind of curves upward so that the cheat line is too high. So when you get to the wing, it's too high. And then it curves down again at the rear. And when you look at the actual aircraft, obviously, it's not doing that. On the actual plane, the cheat line is nice and straight. Runs quite close to the cockpit windows, runs quite close to the top of the wing, and is level. So this looks like a dreadful printing job by JC in this instance, some really poor design work, and it has impacted the model to the extent that I wouldn't go near it, because obviously as soon as the cheat line is too high, so the windows and so are the tiles, and it just looks messy and not very good. So it's a shame, and also a double shame, because it's clear that, judging by the box, that Q8 government A340, there'll be a second one released by JC with a different rego, and no doubt it'll have exactly the same printing issues because the two models were made at exactly the same time. So let's not look forward to that release in about 5 or 6 months' time. So this one, difficult to be too complimentary about. I'm going to put this one down into gas guzzler. Not because of the mold, but just because they've bodged the printing quite substantially, I think. So not great at all. Next, we've got an A350-900 BLGD, Hong Kong Airlines. Not a great deal to say about this. There have been 7 previous Hong Kong Airlines A350s, and 4 of them have been made by jcwings. So, what's the point of this one? Not a lot. Its partner release, LH4118, was released in 2021 again, so this one's just been sitting around the warehouse. In between those times, Aviation 100 has made at least one version, possibly 2 actually. So there's plenty of Hong Kong A350s floating around. It'll be okay. It isn't going to win any prizes. Both JC and Aviation 400 incidentally have or use a very dark red for their Hainan liveries, of which Hong Kong Airlines is part of the H&A group. Much darker than Phoenix, and I would have to say that Phoenix probably has a better shade. So there's also going to be some colour issues here. But if you've got lots of JC Hong Kong Airlines, you won't notice. So yeah, this is just workhorse. You know, again, a largely pointless model that no one really cares about. So that's the end of the Airbuses that are going to be released soon. The next release is one of the most interesting of this month, because it at least is slightly different to the usual fare, and it is a Boeing 737-300 in the colours of KLM. And I mean the classic 737 colours, the 90s, with the thicker dark blue window line there. So classic scheme, nice aircraft, and when I look back through what's been made, only one manufacturer has made a KLM 737 in this scheme. Previously that was Aero Classics. It's a hard to find model. This version is subtly different because it has the SkyTeam logo, so it dates the aircraft to the early 2000s. In fact, I saw a picture and this plane was still wearing this scheme in 2008, so that's quite late. So it actually makes this aircraft, I think, pretty interesting and nice. Obviously, this is probably the partner to the KLM 737-400 that was released not too long ago, which I purchased and was a perfectly decent model. The mold is old, but it's been updated. It's not a disaster, and you don't get many 737, 300, 400s nowadays in the scale, which is a real shame. So this one, vaguely tempting. I don't think I will buy it, especially because it's dated slightly beyond my collection criteria with the SkyTeam logo, but it's nice. I'm going to put this one in the high flyer, I think. I was a little surprised that it appeared, and I'm a little interested in it. With some of these jcwings releases, that's like high praise, because a lot of them are just not remotely interesting. Next up, we've got a Dreamlifter. The reg is N249BA, and it comes in flaps up and flaps down versions. I'd be more interested in this if they hadn't already made a Dreamlifter previously with flaps up and flaps down, and if I didn't already own another version of the Dreamlifter, which they haven't actually released yet, but will no doubt come out at some point. It was a model JC sent me, and the aircraft has never actually turned up in the release schedule, but I'm sure it will eventually. So there are plenty of these Dreamlifters around. It's a lovely mold. It looks really nice. I actually did do a review on this one back in the day when I was reviewing, I think, at modelairliners.com, so check that out. I think it got a good score. I like the mold. It's not interactive, but it still looks really good, and it's using the new 747-400 as the base, so it's solid. But it's the same as the previous release. It's the same as the release I own, which will be released in the future. Just the reg is different. And I can't give it any more than a workhorse. So another workhorse. There's a lot of workhorse in this release set because there's a lot of repetition. And that continues with the next model in the list, which is another 747-400. This one is using the new mold as well. It's National Airlines. It's wearing the white base version of their scheme. The registration is N702 Charlie Alpha, but they've released N756 Charlie Alpha not very long ago. Yeah, look again, in 2021. It's like a cunning pattern emerging here. And again, you're saying, yes, using the new mold, but why did you bother making two versions? It's just to split across the regs and then release them out. It's just, I don't like the strategy that JC are using, where they produce two versions of the same model, change the reg, and then wait like 2 years to release the second of them. I mean, it's just deflating. Workhorse is workhorse. And so is the next model, to be quite honest. Oh no, it's not. I lie. There's a ray of light in this release set, and that is the next model. That is also a 747-400, and this one is unexpected if you didn't know a little bit about JC's warehouse and what's in it. I happen to know that they're making, or they've made, a reasonable number of United Airlines releases. They at least have permission for older liveries for United, and they are sitting in the warehouse. And this one is one of those. It's 747-400 wearing the Saul Bass colours, and the aircraft is registered N183UA. There are two versions, again, flaps up and flaps down. The new JC mold is excellent. It's obviously not been very widely used and not been particularly excitingly used, mainly because they can't get permission from Gemini to make those interesting models that fall into Gemini's criteria, which is a real shame. But they've got this one snuck out, and it looks fabulous. It's going to be super popular. And I think this is a model I almost certainly will purchase. I actually already do have a 747-400 in these colours. I have the Gemini version, which dates from 2013 and uses the old Gemini mold. And that's actually not a bad model, but this one is clearly going to be better because this is a much more modern mold with much better moulded in engines. And in fact, it's largely better across the board, to be honest. The fuselage is better, the printing's better, everything's better about it, except perhaps that I still think that the undercarriage on this mold is a little bit too short. But not so short that it's a problem for me buying it. The model looks good in the pictures I'm seeing. I know there's a bit of hubbub about this one, much like there was about the TWA MD-80 that Gemini just announced. It's just such a shame that you get an entire month of releases, 13 models, 12 of them are dross, and then you get this one good one. Could have just done a video about this model, really. So this one's clearly excellent. This one's clearly supersonic. It's exciting. It's interesting. it's needed in the scale because there is not much in the way of an alternative, or certainly not on a mold that's good. So it's nice that they are producing some models which have real class and skill, but not enough, not enough. And otherwise, as you've seen, this is a sea of workhorse releases. And yeah, like I say, I was getting myself worked up and I forgot about it, but now we're back to more workhorse with the last of the upcoming releases from JC, and that is an Iberia 767-300. I've got nothing bad to say about the model. I like the old seamed Gemini 767 they're using, and they've updated the aerials. The Iberia scheme's obviously a classic. But the problem is, again, it's a re-release. This one's ECJ GTI, and the previous one was ECGSU, and it didn't come out, or it feels it didn't come out that long ago. Maybe it was, it was a few years ago, 2020. It didn't seem like it was that long ago, but it probably didn't come out in 2020, did it? It probably was announced and it turned up in 2022 or something. But either way, it's a re-release. So it's workhorse. There's nothing more can be said about it. You don't need to spend a lot of time talking about it. And that leaves us just with the announced models which haven't had production begin yet, but will be produced at some point, as I say, possibly a long time in the future. So you've got to look at these models and take them with a grain of salt, so to speak. The first one of these releases is quite unique. It's a Eurowings A321 DAIDV. Now, that doesn't sound very exciting. It's a CEO, so at least it's not going to have the enormous engines that a NeoModel does. Eurowings is an airline I can care less about. The scheme is so boring. And the concept of Eurowings is boring. The whole thing's boring, but I'm sure that modern collectors will be at least vaguely interested in this. However, the chances of someone else releasing this before the JC version comes out are high, because this is the first Eurowings A321 wearing their scheme. In fact, I believe this aircraft was previously wearing the Lufthansa retro colours, which are so much cooler. But, hey, it is what it is. But it's hard to get, again, excited by this model. Don't like the mold that much, as we've already talked about, and the scheme's boring, but it's going to be ages before it's coming out. So this one's going to go into workhorse again, which at least is better than the next two models, both A321 Neos in the colours of Shenzhen Airlines and Airbus House Colours. Now the Airbus House Colours one is at least quite interesting because it's got this cool scheme with the QR code on it, and these QR style titles. But who knows when it's going to come out, and as I say, the engines on this mould are humongous. And since they can't be bothered to fix the engines on the mould, the chances of them modifying the A321 to remove the inside extra double slotted flaps, which the A321 XLR doesn't have, are also very small. I would suspect, anyway, that jcwings will make this, or someone like that, and it'll be much better. So, yeah, it's definitely a gas guzzler. And the Shenzhen is also going to be a gas guzzler too. ngmodels have announced not the same reg, but effectively the same plane. And it is going to be better, and it will be out in the next month or so. So why do you want to wait a year or two for something which is going to be inferior anyway? You don't. It's pointless. Gas guzzler. Which leaves us with just a couple of models left. One is a Qantas A330-200 VHEBL, and the pride is in the Air Special scheme, so we've got more rainbow on the aircraft. I think this will be popular. Nobody else has made it, almost certainly for licensing reasons. It even comes with a different code, SA4023, as opposed to the usual LH or XX codes that you get with JC releases. So there's definitely some kind of licensing dodge going on here with Qantas. Obviously, this is one of those occasions where this would be a Gemini model usually, wouldn't it? Because Gemini make Qantas, not jcwings. But when there's a licensing problem, we'll let JC make it. Just don't tell anyone. So anyway, that's what's going on. The JC A330-200 is, I was going to say mediocre, that's harsh. It's ordinary. but this will probably be an okay release, and nobody else has announced it so far. I'm not sure whether it will get a release from someone else. Phoenix might do it, you never know. I'm going to be generous. I'll put it into high flyer, even though it's a long way off, and someone else might make it better. But at least it's vaguely unique and interesting. And we'll end with a 777-300. This one is registered N778CK. It's going to be for Collitter Air, and it's available in flaps up and flaps down. However, the livery that I'm seeing associated with this, and when I look up the aircraft, is not Collitter Air's standard scheme. In fact, it's really more like a house colour scheme for IAI, the Israeli company, and GCAS and such, because this is, I think, probably the first big twin cargo conversion of a 777-300ER. So the scheme is quite bland, but nonetheless, it's got these different titles, a big twin on the tail. It does look oddly quite interesting. Will it be made by someone before JC get there? Highly likely, I think. Whereas I'm sceptical that someone else will make the Qantas, I'm almost certain that somebody else will make this, Phoenix or NG. And even though I prefer the jcwings mould to either of those moulds, I think it's a long wait. It's a long wait, isn't it? And it's not that colourful. So, yeah, I don't know. I probably would not wait, and I'd get one of the alternatives that are likely to show up in the next few months myself. And the scheme isn't that exciting. I'm going to put this one into workhorse and not high flyer. It's just not quite got the right combination of features for me, even though I think the JC777 is super good. So, got through that reasonably quickly because it's not very interesting. Out of all those models, the only one really raising your pulse should be that United 747 and perhaps the KLM. The rest, yeah, you've seen it before, or you've seen it better. Or, like the Q80, A340, they've made a bit of a hash. So, each month is like this with JC. I don't see it changing. They release a bunch of models that they've already released pretty much, and occasionally they accidentally almost slip out one which you care about. So, not a brand to get excited about at the moment, JC. They're certainly not reaching the potential that they have reached in the previous year or two, maybe probably a couple of years since they really reached much potential. They've got some nice wide body molds, they've got some poor narrow body molds, and they've got not a lot of imagination and many restrictions on what they can make due to Gemini. So it's a ordinary bunch of models here, really restock. You could say that is restocks, the majority of them. Nothing to get excited about. Certainly not as exciting as NG, and I haven't been overly excited by their release sets for a while, I admit. Certainly not as exciting as Aero Classics, who generally have the most exciting release sets in my opinion. Not even as exciting as Phoenix, and that's disturbing. Yeah, just not very exciting. And even Gemini are outclassing their production partner JC with their release sets at the present time. It's a very odd relationship because Gemini seem to wear the trousers, even though JC are doing all the work. Odd. Anyway, that's it for this month, guys. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Hope you found something interesting in there for yourself, and keep an eye out on the channels, as always, for new content which comes in almost daily. So, thanks very much, guys. I'll see you again soon.